This week on Supercars Talk, it's time to discuss pit lane double stacking. The big news this week is that Dale Wood is joining the Groves for the endurance races this year. It looked like he was going to be sitting out this Enduro campaign, but their first choice, Kevin Estre, was not available for Sandown after the round was moved by a week. He's got some prior commitments overseas, so he couldn't take part, so the team had to look elsewhere, and Dale was available because BJR did not sign him up for another campaign. It's looking likely Dale will be paired with Richie Stanaway, while Garth Tander will be with Matt Payne. Some pretty good combos there, really. The Tander Payne one, I think they're going to be very formidable, but Dale Wood has he's been a really solid co-driver over the last few years, and he does have a bit of experience there with the Braeside team, having a couple of stints at Kelly Racing, when it was Kelly Racing, once as full-time driver, and doing some enduro campaigns there as well. That will definitely be a combo to watch out for, and I'm a little bit surprised that Dale wasn't snapped up earlier in the piece. Now, the big talking point this week is the double stacking in the pit lane rules. This comes about because obviously one boom for each two-car team. Now, obviously, BJR are the only ones that have multiple teams in the championship. But yeah, because each team only has one boom, unlike some other categories like NASCAR, where everyone gets their own pit bay. We're like Formula One, where you can only pit one car at a time. So when the safety car comes out, obviously everyone wants to pit because you lose the least amount of time. This means that there's double stacking, and some places like Topor, pit lane's not really big enough for it, so there was the chaos that we had there the other weekend where Cam Hill was the one most affected by the whole chaos that happened, and he ended up losing a lot of places when he was boxed in. Unbeknownst to us over the weekend, there was a new rule came in for Sunday, and it looks like it will be part of the championship moving forward, where at the steward's discretion, they can decide that we have 2 laps under the VSC. So the first lap, your first car is allowed to pit, and then the second lap, your second car has their pit stop. And then because everyone's driving around at the safe 80 kilometers an hour, no one gets disadvantaged. Everyone gets their pit stops done. The drawbacks to this strategy, we spend more time under the VSC, which, especially if we have to have a proper safety car afterwards to remove something, it means that we have 2 full laps going around and around before we can get to the incident to start doing anything. Because as much as, yes, 80 k's is slow, I don't think they should be having tray trucks and things out there on the track while the cars are still essentially racing, because they are still racing under this VSC system. Everyone's trying to maximize that speed limiter thing rather than actually slowing down and stopping. The advantage though is that then nobody gets disadvantaged, and there's a lot, it makes it a lot safer for the guys in the pit lane, because it probably would have been scary there at Topor, because there were cars banging into each other. Cars couldn't get out of their pit bays and things like that. I would have been afraid of being one of those outside tyre guys, especially as there were kind of cars going everywhere in that situation. Now, this rule won't be in for every track. It looks like it will be just for the ones where there is a smaller pit lane, somewhere like Bathurst, where it's a lot bigger area. It's a lot easier to double stack. Places like that will still run the previous system where you can go in and double stack, but at the tracks where the pit lane is a lot tighter, like Topor, I'm trying to think of some others, probably Perth will be one where you won't be allowed to double stack. I think then somewhere, say like I think Sydney Motorsport Park, fairly big pit lane there, so you're all right to do your double stacking there. So it will be on a bit of a round by round basis whether we have this system running. There was a suggestion in the comments last week of a solution for some of the double stacking problems. Joelrog1, hopefully I got that right. He wants to give a drive-through penalty to anyone that causes, collision or anyone holding anyone up within the pits. And not only it's a team drive-through penalty. So say you're Grove Racing and Matt Payne blocks in Cam Hill, say, it's not only Matt Payne, Richie Stanaway also gets that drive-through penalty. So there is a bit of double jeopardy there for the team to really kind of go, right, we're having Richie in, there's not enough time to get him in and out. Before Matt goes in, Matt, you go and do another lap, or we risk, having a double drive-through penalty if we cause anybody harm, or if you've got, just say for example, like on the Saturday, you had Will Brown right at the front of the field and you had Brock Feeney more towards the back, and you go, well, we've got plenty of time to bring Will in, do his pit stop, and then Brock can come in. So we're quite safe. We don't really have to worry about this potential. And then that takes away some of that. I suppose there's a bit of fear put into the teams that the penalty is quite high if you do cause issues for another team. So I don't mind that solution, but then it does leave a lot of question marks then as to what is you holding someone else up, or, is it just if there is a collision, and then do you see people trying to crash into other people just so they end up getting penalties? So there is a little bit of confusion there. The best solution I could think of for the moment would be that you had somewhere like Topol, obviously Bathurst, you can have proper double stacking there. And what I would do in the pit lane, how they have marked out where you need to stop, is then in kind of the slower lane or whatever, you have a pit bay marked out for your team where essentially your waiting bay if you are in a double stacking situation. So you've got to sit in that bay where it's deemed safe. If it's a pit lane that's too tight, like Topol, you have essentially like a parking lot. You wouldn't have enough room to do this in the pit lane, but maybe on a part of the track going into the pits. Obviously we're under safety car conditions, so you would know that there would be cars parked at that parking bay, and you couldn't then, if you were the second car in the queue for your team, you sit there and wait. Then once the car leaves the pit bay, the other car in your team, then you can leave that parking area to go into the pit lane. You wouldn't have them anticipating and things like that. It would have to be something like once your other team car leaves, that's where you can enter. And if you're, say, the third in queue and your team car leaves, you can't just go straight away and having, cars weaving in and out. You have to wait for the two cars in front of you. Generally, I think that system would somewhat work in a situation like this. It does speed up. You don't have the full 2 laps under a VSC, but I'm not a big fan of the VSC where you're going to have a big situation where you're running 4 laps underneath the VSC before we have a safety car. I still think the VSC should be called if there's something like, a bumper bar that's out on track where a marshal can run, grab it, bring it back. If we've got a situation where there's a car in the wall where we're going to go safety car anyway, just go to safety car, have that kind of, the normal rules as it were. But yeah, that's the solution I came up with. I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments. Has anyone got some better solutions, or do you like the idea of just doing the 2 laps under the VSC? Or we'll have double stacking at the rounds where we have the ability to still do it. Just seems once again, it adds more confusion for the casual viewer because there isn't that, straight clear cut. Even someone like me, you're not quite sure going into the weekend, will this be a double VSC lap 1 or will they allow double stacking? You probably won't really know until it actually happens in the race and you're like, oh cool, or maybe Larko will cover it off in his race facts thing at the start, but yeah, that means you have to actually pay attention to that, because usually I'll admit I'll fast forward through that, because once you've had one it's usually all the same except for maybe the critical lap for stopping. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I'd love to hear if anyone's got some better solutions, and if there's some that I really like, I will bring them up next week. But Until next time, I'm still Dave, and I'll catch you later.